Okay, I'm back, and I'm going to share this story with you, The North Wind. I'm going to hand this book to you so that you can follow along. And first, I'm going to tell you who I have dedicated this story to. This book is dedicated to my precious daddy. My children called him Grandpa RJ. And he was such a good storyteller. And inside the book that you're looking at, it says, "To my precious daddy, Grandpa RJ, who told and retold this story to me and my brothers on car trips, on nights after an exhausting day at work, over and over again until we had memorized his voice telling it. I dedicate this little book to him with gratitude and 88s. And all of you, my special friends, know what that all means. This is for Andrew Mandrew, his precious sisters, Kalena and Sarah and Caitlin, and all of those are my precious grandies who live in Kazakhstan, and to their cousin Maxton, who is my precious Grandy who lives in Temecula. And I love you all so much that GMAS dedicates this book to you too, with loves. And now we'll have the story. The story is in chapters, and the first chapter is The Flour Sack. So let's get to it. Oh, before we read the chapter, I have to tell you that there's another special page because there's some other special people I want to say thank you to. I want to say thank you to my sons, Justin and Casey, and of course their precious wives for giving me time with their children so they could listen to me tell them this story over and over again to make it better and more fun. And I want to say thank you to my darling daughter, Maya Joy, for her encouragement, her love, and guidance that helped me arrive at the final versions. And thank you to my husband, Neil, for his patience and understanding in this and in all things I endeavor to accomplish. Thank you all very much. Okay, now here's the story. Chapter 1, The Flour Sack. Long ago, in the mountains of the far-off Northlands, a young boy named Hans lived with his mother in a small house. The house was so small that they had to store most of their food in a shed. One burring cold morning, Hans came into the kitchen for breakfast, and his mother said to him, "Hans, please go out to the shed and get some flour so I can make bread." Hans was good and obedient, just like you are. And so he did it right away. He started out the door right away. "Put on your coat, scarf, and gloves, son," said his mother. "It's burring cold outside." Hans did as he was told, even though he thought he was big enough and strong enough to take the few steps to the shed without his coat, scarf, and gloves. But when Hans stepped outside and felt the cold air, he wrapped his scarf one more time around his neck to keep out the chill. "You were right, Mother," he said into the wind. Inside the shed, Hans saw that there was only one bag of flour left. Hans untied the string at the top of the bag and peered inside. "Oh dear," Hans said, "this bag isn't quite full. We will have to be careful to use just a little bit of flour at a time if this is to last us until spring." Hans picked up the flour bag and stepped out the door. Setting the bag in the crunchy white snow, Hans bent over to lock the latch on the shed door. Just then, a huge, freezing gust of north wind blew in a heaving swirl around Hans. He gathered his scarf around his neck and closed his eyes to keep the flurries of snow out of them. When Hans opened his eyes, he saw the flour sack nearly flat on the ground. The snow around him was dusted all over with spilled flour. Hans picked up the flour sack and looked inside. "Oh, no!" he exclaimed. "Mr. North Wind, what have you done?" Hans shook his fist at the sky and said as loud as he could, "Now what are my mother and I to do? We've hardly got enough flour for a week, and now give me my flour back!" Hans shouted at the air. A tiny puff of cold air was the only answer the boy got, so he picked up the floppy flour sack and took it to his mother. When Hans showed his mother the flour sack and told her what had happened, she said, "Hans, you must make the journey to the Misty Mountains, where the North Wind lives, and get our flour back." Hans was good and obedient, so he went to get ready for the trip while his mother put together some provisions for him. She emptied out the flour sack and started to bake bread and rolls. When the rolls were ready, she put 2 into the flour sack, along with some fresh water and a bright, crisp apple. The next morning, bright and early, Hans kissed his mother goodbye and started out the door. His mother said, "Wait, Hans, put this in your satchel." She handed him a shiny copper coin. "Your father gave me this coin when he went to sea. Take it with you." Hans was good and obedient, so he put the coin in his satchel and set out to find the North Wind's home at the top of the Misty Mountains. And that's the end of chapter 1. See you in a few with chapter number 2.